Hey, everybody, Nick DiVirgilio here of Big Big Train and DiVirgilio, Morse, and Jennings, and you're listening to Sonic Perspectives. Oh, yeah.
The dictionary says a troika is a Russian carriage or a sleigh usually pulled by three horses side by side, or it can be just a group of three people working together. In this case, the three people are Nick DiVirgilio of Big Big Train, Neal Morse of the Neal Morse Band, and Ross Jennings of HAKEN. Now, each is known, of course, for their own work in the prog rock area, but this particular project is going in a different direction with a new album called Troika, and it is out on February 25th. I'm Mark Boardman of Sonic Perspectives, and we're talking today with Nick DiVirgilio. Nick, how you doing?
Good. Nice to be here, Mark. Thank you.
It's my pleasure indeed. You've got so many things going musically, but this one is right coming up. How did this particular effort get going?
It was a Neal Morse idea. He's been, I guess, he's had the idea of doing something acoustic. I guess the initial idea was something in the Crosby, Stills, Nash sort of vein of acoustic material, 3-part harmony. And he called me and asked me if I'd be interested in something like this. And I said, well, of course, because we have a sort of a history of doing that sort of thing, just hanging out together. Between me and him and Alan Morse, when we were in Spock's Beard together, we would, after shows, we would sing CSN and Beatles songs all night long. And he used to, he sang a lot with his two brothers growing up as a kid, and choirs and stuff like this. So it's been around for a long time for all of us. And I just thought it was a fun idea to try. I'm always trying to become a better songwriter and explore other things. I've been practicing finger style guitar playing a lot more, on the side. And so it's just a nice, incentive, kick in the pants to go, yeah, for sure. At the beginning, we didn't know exactly who the third person was going to be, but that's kind of how that was the initial spark, was when Neal wrote me.
Mm-hmm. Now, we should make a point of this, because some people are referring to the entire project as Troika, and that's right. The name of the album, but not the name of the band. Right.
Yeah, we went through all kinds of different iterations of what we were going to try and call this, like a band name or the last names. Boy, it's a mouthful to get all three of us in one thing. But in the end, to answer your question, yes, Troika is the album name, and DiVirgilio, Morse, Jennings is the band name. So that's just sort of how it ended up. Everybody thought that was cool to do that. We got opinions from all over the place. So
you spent a fair amount of time of your life out west. Did you ever see CSN, or CSN and why?
No, I would have liked to, but yeah, in their heyday, I guess I was a little young. My brother and sister, who were much older than me, didn't want to take me to their shows because I know they saw them play. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really appreciate much of Crosby, Stills, Nash, or Neil Young until later on in my life.
Really?
Yeah, probably my late teens and into my 20s, I started going, wow, there's some cool stuff there. And then once I got together with Neal and Alan and stuff, and we started singing all these songs all the time, I learned them so I could learn the high vocal parts, just so I kind of wasn't the one guy left out in the cold there. And I go, man, there's a lot of really great stuff there. And then I realized what a great songwriter Neil Young is and how many great songs he's got. So it was one of those things that grew on me over time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And finally came to a point where you and Neal and Ross can do something in that vein. Was there any concern as you're going through this process, and especially since you're each working in a remote area, that you'd come up with something that sounded too much like CS&M?
Well, Neal, there's a couple. Yeah, we didn't want that to be the only focus, for sure. Because there's a couple tunes on the record that sound right out of, like, they come right out of the CSN handbook, but it's just so good, and those, Neal has a way of channeling things in his writing that just kind of, they were a big influence on him, right? So he knows how to channel those vibes and sounds and things. So there's a couple on the record that have that flavor, for sure. But we didn't want the whole record to be that flavor. And there's 3 separate songwriters on this record, which is really cool. Neal, I appreciate Neal because, well, I should say, Neal, how prolific Neal is.
Mhm.
He's probably got 400 songs just demoed on the side that he hasn't even touched yet. And he's always writing more on top of that, plus all the records he's made. So he could have easily written all the songs for this record, no problem. But he set out to have it as sort of 3 artists rather than just it be a Neal record. So adding my writing and Ross's writing gives the record a little different tastes and different areas to go down along with Neal's. And I think it's a really good combination.
Mm-hmm. One of your songs is "You Set My Soul on Fire."
Yeah.
Now, is that a nice tune done during a quarantine for your lovely wife, or?
Well, yeah, it's a love song. It's definitely a love song. And she was it was inspiration there for sure. That was the first thing I wrote after Neal asked me if I wanted to be involved in this project. And I had the opening sort of guitar riff I'd been working on. And I just kind of kept expanding on it. And I just thought it was a nice hooky lyric, and then, yeah, when I think of a person I love, I definitely think of my wife. So yeah, she was inspiration for it, for sure.
When I listened to that song, I've listened to it several times. It struck me there are similarities to the Orleans song "Dance with Me." There's a certain flow to it and a pattern to it that's kind of in that vein, as opposed to Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but it's still one of those great vocal tunes.
Cool. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that, but that's great. It's a very cool song.
Of course, isn't that the case that you'll have a lot of influences sometimes in a song, and they're not necessarily all in the conscious mind, they may be subconscious.
Most definitely, especially if you're a fan of music and you listen to a lot of stuff, it all seeps in there. I try to be a student of music and learn as much as I can. And a lot of those great songs, like the one you just mentioned, I've heard it a million times. I've played it a million times in cover bands throughout my life. So it's in there. You don't really realize it, I guess, sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What were some of the other great vocal bands that you listened to growing up or maturing in your own musical efforts?
Well, gosh, it could have been everything from like Manhattan Transfer on the jazz side to definitely the Beatles and all the harmonies Yes did back in the early times, and gosh, all kinds of things like that. Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed, I went
Fields
back.
and Crofts, Ambrosia, all these sort of bands like that. I interrupted you there, but I was trying to think of
that's all right.
more things. Yeah.
So there were a lot of really great bands from the 60s, because you can even start with the doo-wop groups and Motown,
sure, yeah.
and all of those, and taking it forward. One thing that I noticed over the last couple of days as I was preparing for this, I went back onto YouTube and was starting to pick apart these old videos of some of these bands in the studio preparing these songs. And what you saw almost exclusively was all the singers, whether it be the Beach Boys or CS&N, they're circled around one microphone singing. And if something is not quite right, Brian Wilson's, wait a minute, stop. Al, you need to be doing this, and that kind of immediacy and that kind of connection was pretty special back then. And that was something you didn't have with this project.
Right. It would have been nice to do that, for sure. Yeah. Being together in the room and making music is a great thing. We just didn't have that opportunity here. So we had to rely on, each other's artistic integrity and being willing to make changes for one of the other guy's songs if need be, and having your opinions heard and respected, all of those kinds of things. And listen, we've been friends, all 3 of us have been friends for quite a long time, so that was an easy thing to do. And thankfully, Neal's a great writer, Ross is a great writer. I'm realizing how great of a writer he is more and more as I get to know him.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being not as difficult as it might seem.
Mm-hmm. Let's take one song in particular, maybe Julia from the album. I assume that Neal had that idea, brought it forth.
That's a Ross song.
That's a Ross song. It's a wonderful song. It's a great song.
Neal did add some stuff. They changed it around a little bit and sort of collaborated on it in the end, but that was originally a Ross song. And just before you get to your question, when the record actually comes out, there's a bonus track on the end which is Ross's original take on Julia, which is a much, almost like an epic. It's much longer.
It's about 8 minutes.
Yeah, so they sort of pared it down, and I think Neal wrote the chorus that you hear on the single, on the album version of it. So they, you know, it's a great way of looking at a collaboration together, and how they were willing to, you know, Ross was willing to let Neal sort of expand on, make it a little more pop, I guess, a little more straight ahead, and it worked out great. So I just wanted to fill you in on that.
No, I appreciate that very much. When Ross brings a song like that into the operation, does he say, now this is what I hear in terms of the harmonies on the vocals, or does he just throw the song, the basic demo track out there and say, what do you guys think? What should we do?
No, everybody, Ross included on that song, and pretty much all the other songs, had the vocal harmonies sort of going in their head. Like when I demoed my songs and sent them to the guys, I had all the parts there that I wanted to hear. And I knew Neal, just the timbre of everybody's voice, I knew Neal was pretty much going to take the lower harmony part almost most of the time. And Ross and I would trade back and forth between the high or the middle part. Just kind of, that's where our voices land. You know, I always sang the high parts in Spock's beard and these kinds of things. So that's kind of how it all worked together.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, having the preparation, knowing what each of you could do working together, that makes it a lot easier than for going off in different paths to see how those harmonies will actually work together once you're recording.
Right. What's funny, Mark, I tell you, you know, we recorded a bunch of stuff. I mean, we started this project, and I don't know how long, how much time went by, but it was a big chunk of time before we ever heard all three of our voices together on a tune. I think the song Everything I Am might have been the first one that we heard back after sending the tracks back and forth. So we really didn't even know how the voices were going to blend. I think we trusted that it was going to be good, but we didn't really know until we heard it for the first time. And it took, gosh, a while. I'm talking 6 weeks or a couple months or whatever before we actually heard this blend together. And then we go, oh, okay. Yeah, it's going to be okay.
What was that experience like when you finally heard all of this come together?
Oh, it was magic, man. It was really cool. It sounded great. We were totally excited to hear this, what we were gonna do.
Everything I Am is a great lead-off track. It really gets things going and sets the foundation, I guess, for the rest of the album.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it goes into Julia, and it's sort of like two hits, one right after the other. So I think that's one of the great strengths of the album, is those first two songs really get it going.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, with this, if you're trying to be a little bit like CS&N, a lot of the music is sort of wistful or storytelling, nothing too, well, that is until Neal gets going, Neil Young. Was there any consideration about doing the political songs that he and sometimes David Crosby got into?
I really don't know how. No, I don't know. For me specifically, I didn't write anything like that. Neal, you know, there's a couple things vaguely about the pandemic and what we're all going through and stuff in there, but there wasn't any sort of focused political sort of stuff. I don't know if anybody really wanted to go down that road. Ross was just telling these stories that he wrote and came up with. And, you know, Neal has a love song about his wife, you know, and different inspirations came. So who knows? Maybe the second record will be more like that. could be more like Almost Cut My Hair or Ohio or something like that.
Right. We should mention there is a song on there called A Change Is Gonna Come, which sort of talks positively about what's going to come. That is not the old Sam Cooke standard from the early 1960s.
Correct. You're like the third person that has mentioned that too.
Yeah, but not that matters. It's just it's different and it has a very positive spin to it.
Yeah.
Is an effort like this different from a percussion standpoint as you approach it as opposed to one of the other bands you've been in?
Yeah, no, it was a really cool thing because I was able to use different textures and things that I don't normally use all the time, you know, and get into some just experimentation of what would work. I did play drums on a number of the tunes, so I got back behind a regular kit and did that as well. But the percussion stuff was a lot of fun because I was playing some bongos and congas and different, sort of African and Latin based sounds just to add some texture. And it was fun to grab those instruments that I hadn't been used in a while. It was fun.
Is that a process point where you hear where something is going and you say, I gotta try this, maybe see how it works in here?
Totally. Yeah. It's a blank canvas. And so you kind of just you could go for it, especially working like we were doing all remotely. And so I was in my music room here making all the music for that record. I did it all here in my home studio. And, I could spend as much time as I wanted on a percussion track and just try things as much as we weren't looking at the clock in the studio and worrying about paying the studio time and all that kind of stuff. So it opened up that even more to just experimentation and fun.
In a way that you wouldn't be able to do necessarily in another configuration.
Yeah, possibly not. Right.
But you also get to show off some of your other instrumentation talents because you're playing just about everything at one point or another.
Yeah. Yes. Again, that was a fun thing about these tunes because they would send demos, and then I'm sitting here at home learning the songs, and we would just go for stuff and then send it back. And guys, if you don't like it, that's cool. But I just thought I'd try this. So I got to play bass on one of Ross's tunes, which is a lot of fun. And Neal plays bass on a couple of tunes. And obviously I'm playing guitar on a few things. And so, yeah, it really, and some keys. And so it's nice to kind of stretch a little bit.
I assume you've got all those instruments around your studio as well.
Oh yeah, I got a few things hanging out. Yeah.
All over the place, I suspect. When you have that kind of ability in this particular framework to experiment, to try different things, how does that carry over to, well, let's say either Big Train or some of your individual solo stuff?
Well, I think it takes all those other things, Big Train, solo material, and other bands and artists I've played for, all just kind of built up the experience and the vocabulary to be able to kind of know where to go or how to try things. It's definitely a blessing to be able to do as much as I've done because it just prepares me more for things like this, without even necessarily knowing it. And so it was like a natural thing to kind of just dive in and go for it.
Right. Yeah. And then take what you've got from this one and take it back in terms of your experience to another project.
Totally. 100%. Yeah.
What's your favorite song on this particular album? Do you have one?
I don't know. I love the tunes I wrote. I'm very proud of the songs I wrote, which is that. But I love Ross's contributions. King for a Day is a great song. He really added some nice. Well, I think the prog heads are going to dig this record. Yeah. I know it's a straight ahead thing and it's acoustic and maybe a little more mellow than you might be listening to, but I think it definitely has all those muso flavors scattered all throughout. Yeah. And Ross definitely lended those songs to this project. King for a Day being one of them, and just such cool ideas, and a different take on things. So that's definitely one of them. But a favorite is always a tough question to answer for me because I like them all.
Yeah, well, especially at this point, it's easy to like them all as opposed to I played them 200 times and I'm tired of them all.
Right.
When you are crafting a song, are you looking first for a hook? Are you looking for a rhythm? Are you looking for a basic melody? How do you get started on that?
Every song is different, truly. It's just, yes. Mostly starts with some sort of riff, piano, chord progression, almost never comes from a rhythm first. That always kind of seems to come after, or I'm thinking of rhythm while I'm doing something else. But usually from guitar, keyboard, spot, coming up with a progression, and then I'll just hum a melody and those kinds of things. You Set My Soul on Fire just all stemmed from that opening guitar part. I just came up with it and I kept playing it over and over and over again, trying to figure out where to take it and stuff like this. And was working on finger picking patterns and trying to get the coordination down and that kind of stuff. And then sort of you start humming things, and then it just sort of grows like a flower from there.
In terms of your compositions, are you the type that is a, for want of a better term, a brill building composer who sets down for a certain amount of time every day and let's see what's going to come out today? Or is it one of those where something comes to mind, you have a recorder or something nearby that you can hum into just in case you might forget, and then you build upon that?
I do that a lot.
Do you really?
Tons of voice memos on the phone. I actually took some time over the pandemic and actually organized hundreds of voice memos, because if it, before it was just voice number one, voice memo number two. I had no idea what was even there. So I listened to all of them and download them all off my phone. So, but yeah, I do that quite a bit. I got, if I could sit down and write every day, that would be a serious joy. I don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm always coming up with ideas, though. Doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. And what's cool is that, like, I get inspiration from, like, when Neal called and asked about this project, I got really inspired to write that first song. Mm-hmm. So it just, all the other parts of the tune, the bridge and the verses and stuff, just sort of came to me, because I think that inspiration was really the key, the fire that. Yeah. And that happens a lot with Big Big Train with me too. It's like, when I see that go, oh, Nick, we need you. Can you come up with something for this? Oh yeah. Then the juices start flowing even more. So, you got something to focus towards.
Yeah.
So that helps me quite a bit, get to finishing songs and utilizing ideas and expanding on them.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever, well, you mentioned going back through all those little blips that you had recorded and sort of filing them away. Did you find anything on there going, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I'd done that. Here's something I can start with.
Oh, lots of them. You bet. Yeah. All kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. So there is a method to the madness in that way.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Your solo album was so impressive. For many of us, it was one of the top albums of 2020-21. You did so much with it and showed so much variety, and yet I thought maintained an energy and an appeal that was very rare for a lot of albums. Are you looking forward to doing any additional solo stuff, or is that on the back burner someplace?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I'm writing now. The goal was to put out another solo record sometime this year. Mm-hmm. But with the unfortunate passing of David Longdon, it's focusing more to what's going to happen with Big Big Train next. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What I might do is, I have a bunch of songs that are sort of could be put out just as singles, just so I keep some sort of momentum going on the solo side of things, until I can kind of go in and dive into a whole new record. But I think now we're just trying to figure out what's going on with the band and more material and what's going to happen with the singer and all of these kinds of things. So my focus is sort of on that, because it really takes precedence because of the trajectory that the band was in for so long. And we don't want to stop. I don't think David would want us to stop either. So we want to see what that's going to look like. So I'm sort of focusing on that right at this very moment, and then, but I'm always writing, and I definitely want to do a lot more solo stuff. I want to go play live on my own and do all those kinds of things. So I'm really trying to build towards that.
Mm-hmm. Can we assume that in some form or another, Big Big Train will continue?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Okay. I assume that you've been talking over with the other principals, probably in particular Greg, maybe Rickard, about what that form is going to take. Is it still pretty much in the nascent period? It hasn't been that long since David passed.
We're definitely, everybody's talking about it, including Sarah, his partner,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's we have ideas, we're flowing, but they just had his funeral not that long ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's still new. It's definitely still fresh. So, but we also don't want to lose all this momentum that we had either. So if we wait for a really long time, people are fickle, might not be the right word, but things come and go so fast in the music business with new bands and records and stuff like that. It goes by fast and time goes by fast. So if we don't think about it, at least, it could, 2 years could go by before anything happens, and we don't want that. So it's, there's a lot of talking now and ideas and even some demoing some songs just to see what's out there. But we got to be sensitive to everything that happened. And so it's a kind of a delicate balance. It's trying to the term I was looking for,
It seems to me, and maybe I'm off in this, but I've watched the Big Train albums that have been dropped over the past 10, 15 years. And this one, which is a great album and is out now, it's almost as if the band and the management aren't sure how to push it, how to sell it. It's almost like, yeah, please let the folks know so we can have chart placement in England. But other than that, it's just sort of let the people talk about it and pass it on to one another.
Yeah. It's definitely a weird spot to be in. Because we want to pay homage to David. It was his last record that he's going to be on for Big Train. We might have some demo stuff later. Who knows what we might have to release later on down the line that was sort of in the hopper. But as far as a record, this was unfortunately his final thing with us. And we didn't want to not put it out. We want to what's the word I'm looking for? Honor him, of course, but show off what a great artist he was and singer. And he was a huge part. He was just a major part of this band and the sound of our band. And so it's a good thing. I think we're putting out this music so people don't forget that, at least right now, we want him to be remembered.
Of course. Did he get a chance to hear the whole thing before he passed?
Of course. Oh yeah. Of course.
Okay. Well,
because we started putting out we were putting out singles since like last September. And it was a whole thing with the record cut, with the PR firm and all this kind of stuff to try to build more audience online and all this kind of stuff. So that's why we were doing all these singles and stuff. And so, yeah, the music was actually done a little while ago, completed. And then started doing this. So yeah, he definitely heard everything, worked on everything.
Yeah, of course. I think for these years, at least, the new members bring a different energy and a different depth to the sound of Big Train. Not that it was bad before, of course, but it just had a new energy to it that was more exciting in some respects. The first time I had to listen to it.
Yeah, they did. Well, yeah, you're right. Definitely, the energy was fresh, and because they're all really fantastic players and musicians and artists in their own right. So they have a voice and things to lend to the overall music and the sound of our Big Train. So yeah, it's a great thing.
It is, and some of the push that happened has had effect because it is on the British charts right now. And I suspect from talking with friends who are just now picking up, oh well, it's out now, that it's going to continue some pretty good sales here for a while. Is there any chance you're going to come out from behind the drums and sing?
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. That's tough. I don't know. That's all I had how to answer that, really.
No, that's true. It's still.
I don't know. Not being the drummer in the band would be weird. So me and we have such a cool thing going, Greg and I, and the rhythm section and stuff. So I don't know. It's not something I've really thought about, to be quite honest.
Well, with the other band, that has the very short and abbreviated name of DiVirgilio and Morse and Jennings, the press stuff in there calls it a debut album. So I'm assuming there must be thought about doing something beyond that.
I sure hope so. Yeah, like I told you, Neal's probably got enough material easy for 3 more records, just waiting around. So, and I know we've talked about it. Definitely, we want to do something else, and I'm pushing for us to play live, most definitely. So I'm hoping we can get everybody's schedules together to get out there and do some shows, because I think it would be a really fun evening of music.
Yes.
You know, and then
Yes.
you pepper in some other things from all of our solo or, you know, our other stuff in it.
Mhm.
And I think it'd be a really fun evening of music. And so we're definitely looking towards another record eventually. And if it's up to me, we'll be playing live as well.
That'd be great. And I can just start guessing now about what kind of Crosby, Stills, and Nash song you might cover in live performance. It would not surprise me if you guys did that.
Yeah. Good. So
we should mention also, for those people who are not familiar, you work at Sweetwater in Fort Wayne. That is your full-time job, your human being job. And you do a lot with testing drums, with showing off drums and percussion and that sort of thing. That's going well, I assume.
Yeah, that company is just on fire. The expansion, the size of it all is just enormous. Yeah, it's $1 billion company with 2,600 employees now, and just selling every piece of gear you can imagine and doing a great job at it. So yeah, I'm a web content provider for Sweetwater. I'm also still I'm the house drummer in our recording studios too. So yeah, I work with the manufacturers that make all this great gear and make videos about it. Try and show it off so people might be interested to go and purchase it.
Sure. There are worse ways to go through life.
Yeah, no, you're not kidding.
Yeah, I bet. Nick, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you today about all the projects that you've got going.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Troika is out again on February 25th. And we've already got a couple of the songs, the videos that are out, and they're great. Did Christian Rios do both of those?
Oh, yeah. And the next one's coming out next week. The third single will be out next week, I think on Tuesday.
Good.
When that's You Set My Soul on Fire. So, and he did a great job with that one as well.
Excellent.
He's a talented guy.
Oh, he is. He is. Troika has sort of a fourth member in that regard, at least visually speaking.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you have not heard this band, go to YouTube or some equivalent and check out those videos, because they are just great. And this whole project is going to be, I think, something that takes them on a very successful path beyond where they have been in the past. So again, we thank Nick DiVirgilio for being with us today. I'm Mark Boardman for the latest in rock news, interviews, and reviews. Check out Sonic Perspectives, which is at sonicperspectives.com.